Hello, my name is Carmen Nicotra. I'm the Managing Director of PESI in Australia, and I'm here today to talk about polyvagal theory with Deb Dana. Polyvagal is a groundbreaking approach to therapy. And Deb, thank you so much for being here today.
I am really happy to be here and be able to talk about the Foundations training program.
Thank you. Deb, you took Stephen Porges' research on polyvagal theory and you used it as a lens to create a framework and a method that's become so valuable to therapists all around the world. Can we start just by talking a bit about why it's so valuable, why it makes such a difference to what we do in the therapy room?
Yeah, and it's interesting as you say that, and I reflect for a moment on the connection with Steve, all those years ago and where it has landed now. It still amazes me to see how clinicians have adopted this perspective, this lens, and to hear almost daily, I get emails from clinicians around the globe saying, "Here's what I discovered. Here's what my client found." Clinicians who have been working with clients for years using all sorts of models will email and say, "This was a missing piece." And that, I think, is the experience that most of us have, that it's not a replacement for the other models of therapy that you've been trained in. They're brilliant models out there, and I endorse them and endorse people being trained in them. It is in addition to, because no matter what model of therapy you're using, you're engaging with the nervous system, our own system and our client's system. And so to have a way to directly, explicitly do that has been a game changer for therapists. I think clients, when they begin to, I call it befriending, when they begin to befriend their nervous system, things become understandable in a way that aren't understandable when we're working just with our brains. So it's bringing the body in, bringing the nervous system into the conversation, creating a language really that is nervous system based language that opens up information pathways in new ways, that helps people understand their biological response. Because, the nervous system doesn't assign motivation or make moral meaning. So when we understand where our nervous system has taken us in service of our safety in the moment, we can let go of that shame, blame, self-criticism that is so abundant in our own systems, and often how we look at another person. So it takes all that away, and that makes room for curiosity and compassion.
And that's I think, when I think about it, what makes it so powerful is that curiosity and compassion, and the fact that it doesn't matter what sort of therapy you use or what modality you use, this is only going to enhance that. And I love that you use that term befriending, because it talks about an inner connection with ourselves, not just for our clients, but you also talk about therapists in the room being very aware of their nervous systems as well. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yes, and in all of my training programs, that is sort of where we begin, in helping participants understand that you are, yes, going to learn skills, practices, techniques, ways of working with your clients, and it begins with you understanding your own nervous system, because our capacity to regulate, to move out of regulation, as we all do many times a day, and find the way back to regulation, is the foundation of the therapeutic relationship. So when we understand through those terms, we can begin to understand, oh, my nervous system is directly impacting my client's nervous system. And, it goes in this circular loop, this reciprocity back and forth. So I always say to people in my trainings, it's our responsibility to be the regulated system in the room, right? It's my responsibility to be regulated and then help my client find their way to that place. It's not their responsibility to help me regulate.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, we have to befriend our own systems first, and we have to understand these three organizing principles that run through all of my training and are the foundation of this Foundations program: neuroception, hierarchy, and co-regulation. And when we understand those here and embody them here, then we could really become a polyvagal informed therapist.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can see how as a therapist myself, that there's a benefit for therapists before we even have a client in the room, for us to actually befriend our nervous systems, to know what's going on, and then to know what we're bringing into the therapy room can make a huge difference to outcomes for our clients.
Yeah, because the nervous system impacts not only our psychological well-being, but our physical well-being, right? Illness and wellness, understood through the lens of the nervous system, is both emotional and physical. And so, yes, it begins with us. When I can be physically healthy and emotionally present and healthy, then I can bring that to my work with clients. And when that is dysregulated, which again begins in my nervous system, I'm bringing a dysregulated presence to my work with clients, and their nervous systems know it right away. You can't fool the nervous system in that way. Their nervous systems know it, right? And so again, it comes back to this responsibility as a therapist, as a helping professional, to understand my nervous system and be able to bring that regulating, connecting, inviting, welcoming energy, right? That creates the safety that's necessary for therapy to happen, right? Steve once said, safety is the treatment, right? It's the Bonnie Badenoch's title in the book that we co-edited, but safety is the treatment. We know that as therapists, we understand it, but this is a understanding of the biology of safety, so that safety is not a cognitive exercise. I can't create it with my brain. I create it from an embodied place. And polyvagal theory helps us understand how that works, why that works, and how to bring that alive.
Mm. One thing I really like is this psychoeducation aspect of this, that is really empowering for clients, that when they start to actually understand their own nervous system, befriend themselves and are embodied, that's a very empowering place for clients to be in and out of the therapy room.
Yes, I like that you mentioned that, because this way of working is, yes, a therapeutic approach, and there are phases we go through, steps we take, things we do to bring it alive, and it is a way of living, right? It's not just for this therapy hour, it is for all of us outside therapy in our everyday life, because our nervous system is the heart of our lived experience. Right? It is running the show all the time. And I like to say we're helping our clients become active operators of their nervous system. We're helping them understand how it works and how to shape it in the direction of connection. Right? And that is not just for the therapy hour. We have lots of practices that we bring to life in therapy that clients are invited to keep working with between therapy. And for us, just as we're going through our daily life, where is my nervous system? Am I sending a welcome? Am I dysregulated so I feel a bit unsafe or unnerving to other systems? Right? It's my responsibility to know that, because if we think about this in another way, my state impacts every being around me. Right? That's one of the lessons from polyvagal theory, that even without being in a direct connection, my nervous system state is sending a message out into the world. And in therapy, that message is direct between me and my client or clients, me and the group members, the family, the couple, whoever it is. It's also between me and my colleagues, my friends and family. It's everywhere. So it is a beautiful therapeutic model, and it also impacts our lives.
There's a lot of power in that, isn't there? That we actually can understand the impact that our nervous system is going to have on others. And as a therapist, and I hear this from lots of therapists, that time between this session and the next is often where people are unable to sustain the feelings of safety and the work that they've done in that session. So this really does speak to that space in between, doesn't it?
Yes, I think it's very important that the space between is useful as well. And my clients always wanted to know, what can I keep doing? Right? Because they're engaged, they want to change the way they navigate the world. And so I started thinking, well, what can I invite them into between sessions that is challenging enough for their nervous system to keep the movement forward going, but not so challenging that it pushed them into a survival response. And that's the line we walk all the time, right? How do I bring the right degree of challenge for my client's nervous system? And what you learn in the foundations course is really how to walk that line, how to thread that needle, right? That you understand the three organizing principles, and then you understand that each nervous system you're working with is going to respond in its own way. And some days a client is going to be more resilient than others. And so what you learn is, how do I shape the practices for this client in this moment? And how do we come to an agreement for what the work will be between sessions that continues to stretch the nervous system, but not stress the nervous system?
And it sounds like in foundations, that's the finesse that people get, is walking that line and actually really knowing how to do that quite uniquely for each client and to read that well.
Yeah, Foundations is the program that I created as clinicians who took some of the basic 1 day or 2 day training said, "What now?" Right? What next? I need more. And Foundations is the program that I developed out of that. It's a lovely 6 month. It unfolds over a long period of time, so that you have time to engage in some of the bits of teaching, and then try them out for yourselves, try them with clients. It's a small group, which I think is important. It's a group of 48 people, and within that group of 48, participants are divided into smaller groups so that they have small consultation groups. They have what I call a polyvagal partner, which emerged from the very first training I did, that you have one person that you'll travel with throughout this training and get to know and practice with. And so it's a much more rich and deep training than any of the other trainings. You can take lots of the 1 days or the 2 days, but this brings it together in a certain way, right? It builds from the intro through session 5, module 5. It builds in a particular way that helps you really deepen your practice. All right, so you'll know your own nervous system well by the end, and you will have practiced with clients, so that you then have a chance to say, "Ooh, I don't understand this. Let's get more." Right. So you're taken through this training by two of my really skilled expert co-trainers, and then you have consultants who meet with you in between each module to brainstorm, problem solve, question and answer, take you deeper. And I just think it has turned out to be a program that people say they really have time and support to go in, maybe not knowing a lot about polyvagal theory, and come out the other end thinking, I can say I'm polyvagal guided in my therapy. Right. I love it because I get to meet the group twice over the course of the training. I do two 90-minute Q&As, and it's such fun. One's near the beginning, one's near the end, because I get to meet and hear what are the burning questions, what's happening. And by the second Q&A, people are really asking much more clinical questions, because they can see, they're seeing through the lens of the nervous system. And to me, that just brings me a smile. Right, that's my goal. Right, is to have there's I hope it's a before and after experience for people, that after they have taken this training, they can't see the world in another way. They have to see the nervous system as they move through the world. And I get that in that second Q&A, people are really saying, "Oh, but what about this?" Because they're looking through that lens. So it's
It's a
been a
wonderful
really
way to
heartwarming.
describe it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to see the world differently, and
Mhm.
possibly to see themselves differently as well.
Mhm.
And I can hear how, and when I've looked at the outline of Foundations, how it really sets itself apart from all the shorter trainings, which give people a good understanding and the ability to try things out. But this really does, as you say, Foundations, lay that foundation of the polyvagal principles in our
Yeah.
work.
It really is for the helping professional who truly wants to dive in, right? Not just sort of understand and play with, but really dive into this way of working and integrate it into their therapeutic practice. And again, not a replacement for, but an integration with. And I will say though that we've been discovering more and more recently that as you work in this way, magical things can happen, and that's been interesting to me. That it's I didn't set out to create a trauma processing model, and yet as we work this way, we're discovering that the system reorganizes and old experiences integrate in a new way. And so, as with most trauma models, we don't have to hear the story, which is really reassuring to trauma survivors. I don't have to tell my story. And the same is true for this way of working, that people don't have to tell their story, but as the nervous system reorganizes, the story changes. And it's been a very fascinating outcome unintended outcome, so to speak, to watch.
Wow, that's an amazing discovery to have along the way. Very
Yeah,
positive.
leading to, what do we do after foundations? Foundations is really where we need to begin, and you need to take that in order to truly become a polyvagal informed, polyvagal guided therapist. And then I wonder what the next step is. So that's sort
Yeah,
of where I am now, wondering, ooh, and then what? So yeah. So, the invitation is to dive into foundations and really um, anchor in this way of working and see what happens. Yeah.
that's exciting. And I wanted to ask you, people may not know about this, but we all know what triggers are, and we work with those. And I think as therapists, sometimes we're afraid of them because we don't want somebody to be re-traumatized or triggered in a session. But you have another term within your model called glimmers, and even that word sounds like a joyous word. Can you talk a bit about glimmers? It's one of my
Yeah.
favorite things in polyvagal.
And you are not alone in that. I love glimmers as well. I often send my emails, wishing people a glimmer, right? Or sending a glimmer to take into your day.
Yeah.
And recently, the thing that people have most wanted me to talk about in interviews is glimmers, because I think glimmers give us a micro moment of hope, right? Which is so needed in the world we're living in today. So a glimmer is a micro moment of what is this ventral vagal energy, which is this energy of safety and connection, right? And it's just a micro moment. It's something that happens that brings me that sense of, okayness or joy or happiness or ease. There are lots of flavors of glimmers, but it is a micro moment of, oh, right? And, we, one of the things I invite people to do is, notice, have you bumped into a glimmer yet today? Right. And most people, when I ask them that, go, well, there was, right? Maybe you heard a bird sing, or you saw the sun, or a piece of music, started playing, or, I was just this morning, I just got a new, very soft blanket. It just came out of the wash. And I just felt, I went, oh, it was like, okay, this some small thing. The thing I want us to remember about glimmers, though, is that they don't take away from the trauma, right? And it's important for us to remember that this is not a let's look at the bright side, because that's going to do something to take care of the trauma. It is a way of understanding that our human nervous system can very creatively hold both. And it's important for us to remember in our own lives and help our clients remember all of the unresolved trauma can sit still in my nervous system, and I can notice a glimmer, right? The nervous system does both. And as we notice glimmers, they begin to accumulate in our system, and they give us more capacity to then work with the trauma. So they're not only just a joyful micro moment, but there's a reason to understand them. There's a reason to begin to be on the lookout for them, right? It's not that there's one and it's gone. It finds a way in, and they begin to accumulate in my system and give me more capacity to hold on to enough of that regulated energy so that I can then be informed by and process and be with the trauma that's held in our survival states. And I think when we help clients understand that, they love looking for glimmers, right? It's a wonderful, easy to do thing. And I would have clients, say, let's make an agreement. Can you find one glimmer between now and next week? Just one, right? That's a great place to start. One, write it down, bring it back and share it with me next week,
Yeah.
right? And because once you're successful in finding one, your biology is on the lookout for more, right? And we can then bring the brain into bringing language here. So it's this lovely experience that builds capacity and doesn't take away from, doesn't discount or disavow the trauma that is still held. And that's the important piece to remember. I want people to really hear that. It's a beautiful both and it's an important way of building capacity to then reorganize the system.
So glimmers actually are a resource for us once we get better at recognizing them and seeing them.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I often have people set a glimmer intention, and again, when we think about the nervous system, one of the things we know is an invitation feels safe and welcoming. A demand usually brings a survival response. So when you
Right.
write a glimmer intention, it has to be with language that is inviting, not demanding. So for me, I often use the intention, I'm open to seeing the glimmers that appear on my path today, right? That feels inviting, spacious, right? Clients may start with, I'm going to find 3 glimmers every day. And you could feel the difference in the language, right?
Yes.
The I'm going to find, and a certain number sets a sex and expectation. And the nervous system usually goes, oh, right? And our clients, the brain says this, the nervous system goes, oh, I can't do that. I'm going to fail. And all of that, self-criticism, shame, blame bubbles up. So when we set a glimmer intention, we want to make sure we're using language that feels open and inviting, right? So even in the setting of intention, we have to understand how our nervous system works. And each client will come up with their own words. And that's the beauty of this way of working. That's the nuance. That's the skill that you get in the foundations program, because it's over a long period of time where you really get to practice and figure out where's your growing edge. Maybe demands are more where you've been, and learning to write an invitation is hard. Maybe sitting with someone who's dysregulated is more challenging for you. You find where your particular growing edge is, and you are supported in moving through that over the course of the training.
And as I listen to you, Deb, I can hear that there's a vocabulary around this that probably takes some time to develop and to feel comfortable using with ourselves and with our clients.
Yes, there's a polyvagal language, we
Yeah.
become fluent in speaking the language of the nervous system. And the thing that's beautiful about this language is that when I know it for myself and I invite a client into it, we now have our own language. We have a shorthand, right? And then clients can invite their family members in, and we can invite our coworkers in. We begin to speak this shared language, which offers so much information without going into details about specific events, right? And when we think about the nervous system, one of the wonderful things that Steve has brought to life is that it's not the event, it's how your nervous system responded to the event, right? And that's reassuring for so many of us, right? Because some of us don't have memory of details of events. It doesn't matter. We know how your nervous system responded. We can work with that. And for other clients who get stuck in the details, we can begin to let go of some of that, because it's how your nervous system responded. That's what we need to know. So as we speak this language, we can convey a lot of information easily about the nervous system, which is really what we want to know.
Yes, and actually bringing that what probably is normally considered a very scientific language just into our everyday ways of being and self-perception.
Yes. Yes, and I think, it's interesting, because often when I teach or when I write, people, publishers would like different language. And I've been really clear in it's another both and for me. I've been clear in holding on to the biological language because I think everybody should understand neuroception, ventral, sympathetic, dorsal, some basic scientific language. And then people are invited to create their own words that represent that. But I think the foundation is we need to all understand this is our basic biology. And it's been interesting to hear at the end of a training or at the end of a book manuscript, people on the other end have said, "I'm so glad you stuck to that because we all began speaking this language, and we have a shared shorthand now." And so, yes, there is some scientific language, but don't let that um, scare you off because even in the scientific language, it's very welcoming, and there's room to use other words after we understand that.
Wonderful. And that language, excuse me, is certainly becoming more global now, thanks to all the training that you've done. And certainly the people who have been through the Foundations program, because they've been immersed in the training. And I want to talk a little bit about that because you've been very clear about keeping the numbers small so that there are very personal interactions with the trainers, and of course your Q&As that you come in with. How did you arrive at the size of these groups? Because they are quite intimate.
Yeah, that's really what I was trying to do. I wanted to keep it intimate, but have it large enough so that we have a variety of different nervous systems, right? And you get to know a group of people because when you work this way, you really need a community helping you afterwards. So, the training ends, and we need to have created community connection with others because you may go back and be the only person who's speaking this language in the place you work, right? And then you need people to go back to and say and connect with on a regular basis. 48, part of it was dependent on wanting small consultation groups, so wanting groups of four, of twos and fours. So it had to be an even number as we
Yeah,
started, which
yeah.
is interesting. But somehow 48 was a number that I kept coming up with in my trainings. I did these foundation trainings live in person before COVID. And 48 was a number that felt, this is a good number. It's intimate, but not so small that people feel as though they're um, having to be visible all the time. And again, that's a nervous system experience, right? We want to make room for people to find their level of comfort with being a part of a group.
Mm.
Some of us are very wanting to be, outspoken and actively engaged, and other of us want it to be more sitting back and still fully engaged, but not as active. And with 48, there's room for all of that. It also breaks down into the groups of four easily, and then the polyvagal partners easily, right? And then you have various ways of connecting with different groups over the course of the training. And I have heard, people, we do an end of series survey, and people really appreciate the different ways they can connect. And there are some people who, several years after they finished, have stayed in connection with their consultation group or their polyvagal partner,
Oh,
right? So my hope is that it's truly building community, and I think you can't do that in these great big trainings, and even online, where you could have lots of people. I think if when we keep it small, we invite that level of connection that I think is necessary and important.
the Foundations courses run many times out of the US and also out of the UK. This is the first time we've run it from Australia, and we're very excited to be able to offer it in our time zone, which took a bit of doing to get all the consultants and the trainers lined up for the time zone. But this will be our first run, so we're really excited to be able to offer this.
Yeah. Yeah, time zones are challenging, and it really, made sense to have a group who are based your part of the world, and to find the trainers where the hope is, if we can speak about the hope for the future, the hope is that we build a training team who are all based in your part of the world, because then time zones don't become so challenging and
Yes.
crazy. I know even you and I had a date to talk to each other, and I had the totally wrong day because my brain just couldn't do the time zone transition. So yes,
It's so
invite
easy.
people into this foundations training and then begin to build some Australia-based training teams is the hope. Yeah. And I
The
so
lo-
appreciate you building the platform, and making this possible for um, our Australian friends to come in and be a part of the foundations without having to turn themselves upside down to do it in a U.S. time zone. Which I have to say, your people have done that, and it astounds me because people are up in the middle of the night, connecting. So there's a deep passion for polyvagal, I think, in Australia, and I'm delighted that we can now bring it in a time zone that's going to work for everybody.
We are also happy that we can invite within our time zone our colleagues from New Zealand, from the whole of East Asia,
Yes,
Singapore, Hong Kong, India, Malaysia, and we often have people from all those countries in our live online events. So it won't just be the Aussies who'll be
right,
attending,
right.
but
I
all
love it.
these people
I
in
love
that
it.
time zone, which
Yeah.
is a wonderful thing to be able to do.
Yes, yeah. And I talked for a minute about the videos because as we moved online, when the pandemic arrived, it was like, oh, how do we do this? Move to a hybrid, recordings and live online sessions. I took a long time to make. I think there are 15 hours of me teaching recordings that people have access to, and I believe you have lifetime access to that, which is sort of intimidating for me. I think, oh, people, I'm going to be 70 this year. Who knows how long I'm going to be doing that, but people can watch me teach long after I've stopped. Teaching is a little eerie when I think about it, but I really had a lovely time creating the recordings, and people tell me that they kind of know me through the recording. So when I get to meet people in the first Q&A, they already, have a flavor of who I am. But I think the culmination of the recordings, the downloadable materials, the articles, and then the live online and the between modules with your consultation, it's a really rich program. And I'm really delighted with the way that it's turned out. And in some ways, the pandemic, although it changed our lives totally, was a gift to foundations because people from all around the world can come together, and it creates a lovely interconnected community in a way that I couldn't do when people had to travel 5 times to be with me in a location. So in some ways, it's really helped it grow.
Yeah, it's a wonderful, flexible mix of live interactions and recordings and small groups. It's just a beautifully laid out course. So we're really looking forward to it, Deb.
Thank you.
Now, the course begins on the 28th of April, the Australasian cohort.
I like that.
So,
Yes.
and registrations are open on our PESI AU website, and there'll be a link coming up on the screen soon for that. So we're really looking forward to working with you in April, starting in April, Deb, and with the whole team.
Yes, great. Yes, so please, sign up and let's really bring this to life in your part of the world.
Deb, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.